Liraine Voss stood at the tall window of her father's war chamber and watched the twin suns sink below the horizon. The sky burned orange and purple, painting the great towers of the HFY capital in colors of fire. It was beautiful, but she felt nothing. Her mind was too heavy with what her father had just told her. "You want me to marry a human," she said. Her voice was flat and cold. High Commander Zorath sat behind his desk. He was old now, his silver hair tied back in the warrior's knot, but his eyes were still sharp as blades. He had led the HFY Dominion through 3 wars and countless battles. He had never lost. But this enemy was different. This enemy could not be fought with ships and soldiers. "The Dominion is dying, Liraine," he said. "Our trade routes are collapsing. Our allies are abandoning us. The human collective is our only hope for survival. Thanks for watching. I'm Destribe, the people to Lime, of the Dime. The Dominion is dying. The Dominion is dying to is our only hope for survival." Liraine turned to face him. She was tall, even for an HFY woman, with pale blue skin and eyes like polished silver. She had trained since childhood to be a warrior. She had earned her place among the elite guard through blood and skill, not through her father's name, and now he was asking her to become a political tool. "There must be another way," she said. "There is no other way. The humans demand a bond of unity. It is their custom for sealing great alliances. A marriage between our houses will tie our peoples together. Then send someone else, send a cousin, send anyone." Zorath stood and walked to her. He placed his hands on her shoulders and looked into her eyes. "You are my daughter. You are the symbol of our house. If I send anyone less, the humans will see it as an insult. This alliance will fail before it begins." Liraine wanted to argue. She wanted to refuse. But she saw the truth in her father's eyes. He was not asking her as a commander. He was asking her as a father who had no other choice. "Who is he?" she asked quietly. "His name is Daniel Carter. He is an engineer. He will arrive in 3 days." "An engineer?" Liraine let out a bitter laugh. "Not even a soldier? Not even someone of rank? You are asking me to bond with a human who fixes machines. The humans do not think as we do. They do not value blood and title the same way. To them, this man is a respected member of their society." Liraine pulled away from her father and walked back to the window. She stared at the darkening sky and felt something cold settle in her chest. Duty, honor, sacrifice. These were the pillars of HFY life. She had been raised to serve her people above all else. She had always known that her life was not entirely her own. "I will do it," she said. "For the Dominion." Zorath bowed his head. "Thank you, my daughter." 3 days later, the human transport ship landed at the central port. Liraine stood with the welcoming delegation, dressed in formal armor that gleamed under the sunlight. Around her, the HFY nobles whispered to each other. She could hear their words clearly. "A human? How embarrassing! They are so small and fragile, like children. I heard they cannot even survive in hard vacuum without suits. Pathetic creatures." Liraine said nothing. She kept her face blank and her posture straight. Whatever she felt inside, she would not show it to these fools. The ship's doors opened, and a single figure walked down the ramp. Daniel Carter was not what she expected. He was average in height for a human, which made him short compared to the HFY around him. His hair was dark brown, cut simple and neat. His face was calm and unremarkable. He wore plain clothes, no uniform, no decorations, nothing to mark him as important. He walked toward the delegation with steady steps. His eyes moved across the crowd, taking in everything, but his expression did not change. When he reached Liraine, he stopped and gave a small bow. "Lady Voss," he said. His voice was quiet and even. "Thank you for receiving me. I hope I can be worthy of this honor." Liraine studied him for a long moment. There was nothing impressive about him. No strength in his build. No fire in his eyes. He looked like exactly what he was, a simple man who fixed machines. "Welcome to the Dominion," she said. The words felt like ash in her mouth. The bonding ceremony took place 1 week later. It was a grand affair, filled with music and lights, and thousands of guests from across the Dominion. Lyran wore the traditional white armor of an Aetheri bride, and Daniel wore a simple black suit that the humans had provided. They spoke the ancient words. They exchanged the ritual gifts. They pressed their palms together as the priests blessed their union. And through it all, Lyran felt like she was watching herself from very far away. When the ceremony ended, the nobles approached to offer their congratulations. But Lyran could see the mockery hidden behind their polite smiles. They thought this was a joke. They thought she had been lowered by this union. One young lord, a man named Kevin, stopped in front of Daniel and looked down at him with obvious contempt. "So you are the human," Kevin said. "Tell me, what skills do you bring to our great dominion? Can you fight? Can you lead? Can you do anything useful at all?" Daniel looked up at him calmly. "I can fix things," he said. "When something is broken, I make it work again." Kevin laughed. "How wonderful. Perhaps you can fix our toilets when they malfunction." The nobles around them chuckled. Daniel said nothing. He simply nodded politely and turned away. Lyran watched the exchange with a mixture of shame and frustration. She was bonded to this man now. His humiliation was her humiliation. And he did not even seem to care. That night, they were given separate chambers in the royal palace. Lyran was grateful for that, at least. She could not imagine sharing a room with this quiet stranger. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside her window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, her people were struggling to survive. Trade ships were being turned away. Allies were breaking their treaties. The Dominion was slowly falling apart. And her only hope was a human engineer who fixed broken machines. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But sleep did not come easily that night. She kept seeing Daniel's face calm, quiet, unremarkable. She kept wondering what secrets hid behind those still eyes. She told herself it did not matter. He was a symbol, nothing more. A piece in a political game. She would fulfill her duty, and that would be enough. She had no idea how wrong she was. 3 months passed, and Lyran's life returned to something like normal. She trained with the elite guard each morning. She attended council meetings with her father each afternoon. She reviewed battle reports and tactical plans each evening. Her days were full and busy, and she was grateful for that. It made it easier to forget about the human. Daniel had settled into a small workshop near the palace engineering bay. He spent his days there, fixing machines and maintaining equipment. He rarely spoke to anyone unless spoken to first. He ate his meals alone. He walked the palace halls with his head down and his hands in his pockets. The Aetheri servants called him the quiet one. The nobles called him worse things when they thought no one important was listening. But Daniel never seemed to notice or care. He just kept working, day after day, silent and steady. Lyran saw him perhaps once or twice a week, usually by accident. They would pass each other in a hallway or see each other across a crowded room. He would nod politely, she would nod back. And that was all. She told herself this arrangement was perfect. They fulfilled the requirements of their bond without actually having to be bonded. It was clean and simple, but sometimes, late at night, she found herself thinking about him. Not with affection or interest, just curiosity. He was so different from anyone she had ever known. The Aetheri valued strength, pride, and honor above all else. They announced their presence with loud voices and bold actions. They demanded respect and attention wherever they went. Daniel did none of these things. He moved through the world like a ghost, noticed by no one, bothering no one. It was almost impressive in its own strange way. One evening, Lyran finished her training late. The twin suns had already set, and the training yard was empty and dark. She was walking back to her chambers when she heard a strange sound coming from the secondary courtyard. She followed the sound and found Daniel there, alone in the moonlight. He was moving through a series of slow, flowing exercises. His arms swept through the air in wide circles. His feet shifted across the stone floor in careful patterns. His breathing was deep and steady. The movements looked almost like a dance, But there was something else beneath the grace. Something controlled and precise. Lyran watched from the shadows for several minutes. She had never seen anything like this. It was not aethery combat training. It was not human military drills. It was something older and stranger. Finally, she stepped forward into the light. "What are you doing?" Daniel stopped and turned to face her. He did not seem surprised to see her. "Just some exercises," he said. "It helps me think. I have never seen movements like those." "What style is this?" "It does not have a name, just something I learned a long time ago." Lyran walked closer. In the pale moonlight, she noticed something she had never seen before. Daniel's hands and forearms were covered in scars. Old scars, faded and white, but deep. Some looked like burns, others looked like cuts from blades. "Those scars," she said. "Where did they come from?" Daniel looked down at his hands as if he had forgotten they were there. "Old accidents," he said. "From my work." "You are lying." He looked up at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something hard and distant. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual calm expression. "Good night, Lady Voss," he said. He bowed slightly and walked away. Lorraine watched him go. Her curiosity had grown into something sharper now. Something that felt almost like suspicion. 2 weeks later, she got her answer. It happened in the main training hall during the afternoon session. A young aethery soldier named Torek was showing off for his friends. He was big and strong, one of the best fighters in his class. He had been drinking earlier, and the alcohol had made him bold and stupid. Daniel happened to be walking through the training hall on his way to fix a broken climate unit. Torek spotted him and called out, "Hey, human! Come here!" Daniel stopped and turned. "Can I help you with something?" Torek walked toward him with a wide grin. "I have been curious about something. Everyone says humans are weak and soft. Is that true? Can you fight at all?" "I would rather not," Daniel said quietly. "Come on, just one match. I will go easy on you. I promise not to break anything important." The other soldiers laughed. A small crowd began to gather. Lyran was among them, watching from across the hall. Daniel shook his head. "I really need to get back to work. Are you scared?" Torek stepped closer, his voice mocking. "The little human is scared of a friendly match?" "Graham, are you scared of a friendly match?" Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed and set down his tool bag. "One exchange," he said. "Just one." Torek laughed and raised his fists. He was almost a full head taller than Daniel, and his arms were thick with muscle. This was going to be easy. He swung at Daniel's head with a fast right hook. What happened next was so fast that Lyran almost missed it. Daniel did not block the punch. He did not dodge it. He simply was not there anymore. He had shifted to the side at the last possible moment, and his hand came up in a single fluid motion. He caught Torek's arm, twisted his body, and used the soldier's own momentum to flip him through the air. Torek hit the ground hard. The sound echoed through the silent training hall. For a moment, no one moved. Torek lay on his back, gasping for breath, staring up at the ceiling in complete shock. He had been beaten in less than 2 seconds. Daniel stepped forward and offered his hand. "Are you all right?" "I apologize. I should have been more careful." Torek stared at the offered hand like it was a snake. Then he slapped it away and scrambled to his feet. His face was red with humiliation. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again. Finally, he just turned and walked away without a word. The crowd parted to let him through. Then they all turned to look at Daniel. He picked up his tool bag and nodded politely to the watching soldiers. "Please excuse me, I have work to finish." And then he walked away. Calm and quiet, as if nothing had happened. Lyran stood frozen in place. Her heart was beating fast, and her mind was racing even faster. She had trained her whole life to fight. She had studied every combat style in the Dominion. She knew what skill looked like. What she had just seen was not normal. That movement, that timing, that perfect control, those were not the skills of an engineer who fixed machines. Those were the skills of someone who had trained for years. Someone who had fought for real. Not just in practice halls. She thought about the scars on his hands. She thought about the strange exercises in the moonlight. She thought about the way he watched everything. With those calm, quiet eyes. "Who are you, Daniel Carter?" she wondered. "What are you hiding?" She did not know the answer yet, but she was determined to find out. The attack came without warning. Lyran was in the council chamber when the first reports arrived. A young communications officer burst through the doors, his face pale with terror. "The Kethari," he gasped. "They have attacked the border colonies. Thousands are dead. The fleet is overwhelmed." The room erupted into chaos. Council members shouted over each other. Generals rushed to the tactical displays. Servants ran in every direction, carrying messages and orders. Liraine pushed through the crowd to reach her father. High Commander Zorath stood at the center of the storm. His face like carved stone. He was already issuing commands, directing ships and troops to the front lines. "How is this possible?" Liraine demanded. "The Kethari have never attacked us before. We have no quarrel with them." "It does not matter why," Zorath said grimly. "What matters is that they are here. The Kethari swarm does not negotiate. They do not make demands. They simply consume." Liraine knew the stories. The Kethari were an insectoid race that had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. They moved from system to system like a plague of locusts, stripping planets of resources and leaving nothing behind but ash and bones. No species had ever successfully resisted them for long. Over the next 3 days, the situation grew worse. Colony after colony fell to the swarm. The Aetheri fleet fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 10-1. For every Kethari ship they destroyed, 5 more took its place. Then came the worst news of all. High Commander Zorath had traveled to the front lines to take personal command of the defense. It was supposed to be a quick visit to boost morale. But the Kethari had been waiting for him. They ambushed his flagship and captured him alive. The Kethari warlord sent a message to the Aetheri homeworld. The transmission showed Zorath in chains, kneeling before a massive creature covered in black chitin and glowing red eyes. "Your leader belongs to me now," the warlord said. His voice was like grinding metal. "Surrender your worlds, or watch him die slowly. You have 3 days to decide." The transmission ended. The council chamber fell silent. Liraine felt something cold and sharp twist in her chest. Her father, her proud, strong father. On his knees before that monster. She had never seen him look so small. The council argued for hours about what to do. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to negotiate. But there was nothing to negotiate with. The Kethari did not make deals. They only made threats. Finally, Liraine stood up. "I will lead a rescue mission," she announced. "A small strike team. We will infiltrate the warlord's flagship and free my father." The council members stared at her like she had gone mad. "That is suicide," one of them said. "The flagship is surrounded by the entire swarm. You would never even reach it." "I will reach it," Liraine said. "And I will bring my father home. With or without your support." She turned and walked out of the chamber. She did not look back. That night, Liraine gathered her equipment in her quarters. She packed weapons, armor, medical supplies, and explosives. She planned the mission in her head, running through every possible scenario. She knew the odds were against her. She knew she would probably die. But she also knew she could not do nothing. Her father had sacrificed everything for the Dominion. Now it was her turn to sacrifice for him. She was strapping on her combat armor when she heard a knock at her door. She opened it and found Daniel standing there. He was dressed differently than she had ever seen him. He wore a set of tactical combat gear, human military design, but heavily modified. His usually calm face was harder now, his eyes sharp and focused. "I am coming with you," he said. Liraine blinked. "What?" "The rescue mission. I am coming with you. This is not your fight, Daniel. This is an Aetheri matter. You do not need to risk your life for us. Also, Daniel stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. When we were bonded, I made a promise. Your people became my people. Your fights became my fights. I meant those words. You are an engineer. This is a combat mission against the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. You would only slow me down. Round. Round. Something changed in Daniel's eyes. Something dark and old surfaced from deep within him. For the first time since she had known him, he did not look like a quiet man who fixed machines. He looked like something else entirely. There is something I have not told you about myself, he said quietly. Before I was an engineer, I was something different. I served in Earth's planetary defense force. I fought in the last war. When the machines tried to wipe out humanity, I was part of the final assault on the enemy stronghold. Liraine stared at him. She had heard stories about the last war. It was one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. Billions had died. The survivors were said to be changed forever by what they had seen and done. I retired because I was tired, Daniel continued. Tired of fighting. Tired of killing. Tired of watching people die. I wanted to build things instead of destroying them. I wanted to be useful in a different way. He looked down at his scarred hands. But some things do not stay buried. Some skills do not go away. I spent 20 years learning how to take life. I can spend one night using those skills to save someone who matters. Liraine was silent for a long moment. She studied his face, looking for any sign of doubt or fear. She found none. Only a cold, steady determination that she recognized from her own reflection. Who were you? She asked. In the war. What did they call you? Daniel met her eyes. They called me a lot of things. Most of them were not pleasant. But the official title was Combat Specialist, First Class. I led a unit that handled the missions no one else could handle. The missions that required a certain kind of person. Where? A Mother M. Where? A Mother M. Liraine felt something shift inside her. The quiet engineer she had dismissed for months was gone. In his place stood a warrior who had seen things she could not imagine, a man who had buried his true self under layers of silence and humility. She had married him out of duty. She had ignored him out of pride. And now she was seeing him for the first time. We leave in 1 hour, she said. Can you be ready? Daniel nodded. I have been ready for a long time. He turned and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and looked back at her. Liraine, he said. It was the first time he had used her name without the formal title. We are going to bring your father home. I promise you that. And somehow, against all logic, she believed him. The strike team consisted of 12 soldiers. 10 were Aethery elite guards, the best fighters in the Dominion. The other 2 were Liraine and Daniel. They traveled in a small stealth ship, designed to slip through enemy lines without being detected. The journey took 6 hours. No one spoke much. They all knew what waited for them at the end. Liraine sat in the cockpit, watching the stars slide past the window. Daniel sat beside her, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and steady. He might have been sleeping, but she knew he was not. He was preparing himself in some way she did not understand. Tell me about the last war, she said quietly. What was it like? Daniel opened his eyes but did not look at her. It was loud, he said. And bloody. And long. The machines were everywhere. They did not feel pain. They did not feel fear. They just kept coming. Wave after wave, until there was nothing left but them or us. How did you survive? I am not sure I did. He turned to look at her then. Part of me died in that war. The part that believed in fairness and mercy and clean endings. What came out the other side was something harder, something that could do what needed to be done, no matter the cost. Liraine nodded slowly. She understood that feeling. Every warrior carried scars that did not show on the skin. And after? She asked. Why did you become an engineer? Because I needed to remember what it felt like to create something instead of destroying it. Every machine I fix, Every system I repair it reminds me that I can still build. That I am not just a weapon. Before Lyran could respond, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Approaching the target. 5 minutes to insertion. The team moved to the deployment bay. They checked their weapons and armor one last time. Daniel pulled a pair of combat knives from his belt and tested their weight. Lyran noticed that his movements had changed again. He was looser now, more fluid, like a predator preparing to hunt. They launched from the stealth ship in individual drop pods, falling toward the warlord's flagship like shooting stars. The Cathari defenses were focused on the larger threats, the Aetheri warships fighting in the distance. They did not notice the 12 tiny objects cutting through the void. The pods breached the flagship's hull in a maintenance section. The team emerged into a dark corridor, filled with steam and strange organic smells. Cathari ships were partly alive, grown from biological material as much as built from metal. The walls pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of some massive creature. "Stay together," Lyran ordered. "Move fast and quiet." The detention level is 3 sectors away. They advanced through the ship, avoiding patrols when possible and eliminating guards when necessary. The Aetheri soldiers were skilled and disciplined. They moved like shadows, their weapons silent and deadly. But the deeper they went, the more enemies they encountered. The Cathari had been expecting an attack. They had laid traps throughout the ship. The first ambush hit them at a junction point. Cathari warriors burst from hidden panels in the walls, their razor-sharp limbs slashing through the air. 2 Aetheri soldiers died in the first 3 seconds. "Fall back," Lyran shouted. "Form defensive positions." The team retreated to a narrow corridor, trying to create a choke point. But the Cathari kept coming. They poured from every direction. An endless tide of black chitin and glowing eyes. 3 more soldiers fell. Then 2 more. The team was being torn apart. Lyran fought with everything she had. Her blades sang through the air, cutting down enemy after enemy. But there were too many. For every Cathari she killed, 3 more took its place. A massive warrior knocked her weapon away and pinned her against the wall. Its mandibles opened wide, dripping with venom. She could see her own death reflected in its compound eyes. Then Daniel was there. He moved faster than she had ever seen any living thing move. His knife punched through the Cathari's throat, and he ripped it sideways, nearly taking the creature's head off. The body fell, and Daniel was already moving to the next target. What happened next would haunt Lyran's dreams for years to come. Daniel did not fight like an Aetheri warrior. He did not use elegant forms or precise techniques. He fought like something wild and broken and utterly terrifying. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. He moved through the Cathari like a blade through water. Every strike was lethal. Every movement was efficient. He did not waste a single motion. When his knives broke, he took weapons from fallen enemies. When those broke, he used his bare hands. He killed 10 Cathari in the first 30 seconds, then 20, then 30. The corridor was filling with bodies, and still he did not slow down. The surviving Aetheri soldiers stopped fighting. They could only stand and watch as the quiet human engineer transformed into something else entirely. Something ancient and terrible. Something that had been sleeping inside him for years, waiting to be awakened. Lyran watched as Daniel grabbed a Cathari warrior twice his size and broke its neck with a single twist. She watched as he dodged plasma fire and closed the distance to the shooter in the space between heartbeats. She watched as he painted the walls with alien blood and never once lost his footing. In the old Aetheri language, there was a word for warriors who transcended normal limits. Warriors who fought with such fury and skill that they seemed touched by the gods themselves. The word was rarely used anymore. It belonged to legends and myths, not to the modern age. But as Lyran watched Daniel tear through 50 Cathari warriors without stopping, she understood why that word existed. Vethkai, battle deity. The last Cathari warrior fell, and suddenly the corridor was silent. Daniel stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard, covered in blood that was not his own. His eyes were distant and empty, seeing something that no one else could see. Then he blinked, and the emptiness faded. He looked at Lyran and the 3 surviving soldiers, with something like exhaustion. "Is everyone all right?" he asked. His voice was hoarse and quiet. Lyran could not speak. She could only nod. Daniel wiped his face with the back of his hand and picked up a fallen rifle. "Good. We still have a mission to complete. The detention level is close." He started walking down the corridor, stepping over the bodies like they were nothing. The Aethery soldiers exchanged glances. Then they followed him. Lyran was the last to move. She stood for a moment longer, staring at the destruction around her. 50 warriors, dead in less than 5 minutes. Killed by one man. She had called him unremarkable. She had called him weak. She had wondered what use such a fragile creature could possibly serve. Now she knew the answer, and she was terrified. Not of the enemy ahead, not of the mission or the danger or the likelihood of death. She was terrified of the man she had married, terrified of what he had become, terrified of what he might become again if pushed too far. But beneath the fear, there was something else. Something that felt almost like hope. If anyone could save her father, it was this man. This quiet, scarred, broken man who had buried a monster inside himself and was now letting it out. She gripped her weapon and followed him into the darkness. They found High Commander Zorath in a cell at the heart of the detention level. He was beaten and bloody, but alive. When he saw his daughter, his eyes filled with tears. "Lyran," he whispered, "you should not have come. It is too dangerous." "I could not leave you," she said. She cut his chains and helped him to his feet. "Can you walk?" "I can manage." He looked past her and saw Daniel standing guard at the door. The human. He came too? Home. He did more than come. He saved us all. Zorath studied Daniel with new eyes. The quiet engineer he remembered was gone. In his place stood a warrior covered in enemy blood, holding a stolen rifle like it was an extension of his body. "There is much you have not told us about yourself, Daniel Carter," Zorath said. "There is much that was not relevant before," Daniel replied. "Right now, we need to move. The warlord knows we are here. He will be coming." They made their way toward the extraction point, but the ship was on full alert now. Cathari warriors flooded the corridors, hunting for the intruders. The 3 surviving Aethery soldiers formed a protective ring around Zorath, fighting off attackers while Daniel cleared the path ahead. They were almost at the hangar when the warlord found them. He came through a wall, not through a door, but through the actual wall, smashing through metal and organic tissue like it was paper. He was enormous, standing 3 meters tall, his body covered in armor made from living black chitin. His eyes burned like red stars, and his voice shook the air itself. "You think you can take what belongs to me?" the warlord roared. "You think you can walk into my ship and steal my prize?" He charged at the group with terrifying speed. 2 of the remaining Aethery soldiers tried to stop him. He killed them both with a single sweep of his massive arm. Lyran pushed her father behind her and raised her weapon. But she knew it was useless. She had seen the reports on Cathari warlords. They were living weapons, bred for combat over thousands of generations. No one had ever defeated one in single combat. Then Daniel stepped forward. "Get Zorath to the ship," he said. "I will handle this." "Daniel, no. He is too strong. You cannot. Go." He did not raise his voice, but there was iron in it. "This is what I am for." The warlord laughed, a horrible grinding sound. "A human challenges me? Your species is nothing but food. You are meat waiting to be harvested." Daniel set down his rifle. He pulled a knife from his belt. Just one knife against a monster that had conquered worlds. "I have been called many things," Daniel said quietly, "but I have never been called food." The warlord lunged. Daniel moved. What followed was the most brutal fight Lyran had ever witnessed. The warlord was faster and stronger than anything Daniel had faced before. His claws could cut through starship armor. His exoskeleton could shrug off plasma fire. He was a perfect killing machine, honed by evolution and training. But Daniel did not try to match his strength. He did not try to overpower him. Instead, He flowed around the warlord's attacks like water around a stone. He struck at joints and weak points, targeting the gaps in the creature's armor. He bled the monster one cut at a time. The warlord grew frustrated. His attacks became wilder, more desperate. He could not understand how this tiny creature kept evading him. He could not understand why his blows kept hitting empty air. Daniel was hit several times. A claw opened his shoulder to the bone. A tail strike cracked his ribs. A backhand sent him flying into a wall hard enough to dent the metal. Any one of those injuries should have ended the fight, but Daniel kept getting up. Every time he fell, he rose again. Every time he was thrown back, he came forward. There was something in his eyes now. Something that burned brighter than pain or exhaustion. Something that refused to die. He was drawing on something deeper than skill or training. He was drawing on every loss he had ever suffered. Every comrade he had buried. Every nightmare that still haunted his sleep. He was channeling 20 years of buried grief and rage into this single moment. The warlord struck at his head. Daniel ducked under the blow and drove his knife into the creature's leg joint. The warlord screamed and stumbled. Daniel was already moving, climbing up the monster's body like a spider, searching for the killing blow. The warlord grabbed him and squeezed. Lyran heard bones crack. Daniel coughed blood. But his hand was still moving, still driving the knife forward. The blade found the gap between the warlord's helmet and chest plate. It punched through the soft tissue beneath and kept going. All the way to the hilt. The warlord froze. His grip loosened. Daniel fell to the floor, gasping. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the warlord's eyes flickered and went dark. His massive body swayed once, twice, and then collapsed with a sound like thunder. Silence filled the corridor. Daniel lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. He was broken in a dozen places. His breathing was shallow and wet. But he was alive. Lyran ran to him. She knelt beside him and took his hand. Daniel, Daniel, can you hear me? He turned his head slowly and looked at her. A faint smile crossed his bloodied face. Did we win? You killed him. You killed the warlord. Good. His eyes started to close. That is good. Stay with me. Do not you dare die now. Not after everything. Daniel's smile widened slightly. I am not dying. Just resting. Being a battle deity is exhausting. Lyran did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did both. The remaining soldier helped carry Daniel to the extraction ship. They escaped the flagship just as the Aetheri fleet launched its final assault. Without the warlord's command, the Kethari swarm fell into chaos. The invasion collapsed within hours. 3 days later, Daniel woke up in the medical wing of the royal palace. He was wrapped in bandages from head to toe, connected to a dozen different machines. But he was alive. Lyran was sitting beside his bed. She had not left since they returned. She was still wearing her combat armor, still covered in dried blood and grime. You look terrible, Daniel said. His voice was weak but steady. You should see the other guy, Lyran replied. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then they both started laughing, even though it hurt. Later, when Daniel was stronger, they talked. Really talked. For the first time since their bonding. Lyran told him about her childhood, her training, her dreams and fears. Daniel told her about the last war, about the friends he had lost, about the years of silence that followed. I thought I understood duty, Lyran said. I thought I knew what strength looked like. I was wrong. You were not wrong, Daniel said. You just had an incomplete picture. Strength is not about being powerful. It is about knowing when to use that power. And having something worth protecting. Lyran reached out and took his hand. His scarred, broken, beautiful hand. I married you out of duty, she said. I ignored you out of pride. But somewhere along the way, something changed. You changed me. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. You changed me too. You gave me something to fight for again. Something beyond survival. Outside the window, The twin suns were rising over the Aethery capital. The city was celebrating their victory. Songs were being sung in the streets. Statues were being planned for the heroes who had saved them. But in the quiet hospital room, two people from different worlds sat together and held hands. They had started as strangers bound by politics. They had become something more, something real. And across the stars, word spread of what had happened. How a single human had challenged the most feared warrior in the galaxy, and won. How the weak species had produced something that even the Kethari could not stop. The other races began to whisper a new warning to each other. Do not mistake human silence for weakness. Do not mistake their kindness for softness. For beneath that quiet surface lies something ancient and terrible, something that has been forged in the fires of 1,000 wars. When a human rises, even gods take notice. And in the Aethery Dominion, they had a new legend. A story about a quiet engineer who fixed broken things. A story about a battle deity who had been sleeping and finally woke up. A story about love that started with duty and ended with something far greater. The end.